Hello and welcome to Season 6, Episode 29 of Dualistic Unity. I am feeling all sorts of stuff, and I feel like I've started off a lot of episodes like that, but a lot of different things going through, and just had a quick conversation with a friend just about uncertainty, like in terms of things we think and stories we tell ourselves and thoughts about ourselves, one side or the other, and realizing that we can't really be sure of any of it. That spectrum of anything is all there, all on the table, and allowing yourself to be all of that really opens up your mind a bit when it's not like, well, no, but this, and like everything can become this sense of trying to validate that perspective or show that perspective or prove that perspective or express that perspective. And then any thought of anything that's going to get in the way of that is scary.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I've been feeling a lot, but I'm feeling pretty good about that. And, it's funny because I would say we can act however we like, given how we feel. So if we feel a lot, we don't have to react to those feelings, but we can, in fact, choose what to do with that feeling, so long as we don't get so weighed down and entangled by it. But what's funny about that is that choice really comes from a lifetime of getting lost in shit and not enjoying it. And it's really just how much you're paying attention to that process that dictates how much you get out of that process. That's why it's so important to just do it, just to go forward, because you may not be enjoying the journey right now, but that is the process of you learning to enjoy the journey. Because what you're learning from this period that you don't enjoy is why you're not enjoying it, if you're paying attention. And that comes down to how heavy you're making it. And this is a real bitch in terms of whatever the fuck this journey we're on is. There is a point where the only thing you can do is put your money where your mouth is and let go. All the thinking in the world can't get you past that point. This is why there's a song by Pucifer called The Humbling River. It's basically about, I've conquered all of this stuff. I've faced all these things, and I still can't cross that river. And it's because it doesn't matter how much you've done, how strong you are, how many things you've faced. That has nothing to do with crossing the river. It's just allowed you to keep coming back to the river so you can look at it. But that leap of faith requires you to let go of the problem solving, the you that is problem solving, and where it all goes, what it all means. To just have faith. And there is no sense that you are doing anything within that sense of faith. You are just doing. It has nothing to do with you, the idea. It's cool. That said, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. I noticed we have quite a few people in the comments section. I'm glad you're here, because it really is important to just keep this shit light, to keep it light, which doesn't mean it's not going to be heavy, but it means you're not making it heavier. And we know how to make it heavier. We make it about us. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. There's so much in there. Because somehow we think that the recognition that perhaps we're doing something requires us to not only just recognize it, but then to beat ourselves up about it, like that's somehow making us change more. And I've always said this, and I always find it frustratingly simple. because once again, it's not about me. It's just the recognition. It's just the recognition. We want to make it about doing something with that after the fact. Like, I've realized I'm avoiding something. I need to do something. In contradiction to that, I need to fight back. I need to make sure I'm not doing that shit. And all you've done is gone back into another avoidance, and that you're thinking about yourself instead of just going, oh, all right, and moving on. And moving on, because that moment of recognition changed you. It just doesn't feel dramatic, you see. It doesn't feel like, oh, this big life change. No, it's a very minuscule one. All right. But it's all of the little pebbles that eventually make the avalanche. Focus on the pebbles. Stop looking for the avalanche.
And wanting to turn things into something big too, because it's like things are big to you. You know, your life, your experiences seem big to you when it's all you're looking at. But as soon as you talk to another person about something, it's like all of a sudden they're like, "What's going on in your life?" Like, "Wait, I thought you were thinking about me." It's like, "No. No. No." Cuz like you're the only one thinking about yourself for the most part until it's like you're in spaces like dualistic unity where people aren't thinking about themselves so much, and it gets glaringly obvious when people are. And it's like you can't, and then it's like a different group that isn't doing the thing that's the self-validation type stuff, because like there isn't this thought that someone should be a certain way, you know, or should do a certain thing, or like should live up to standards that are self-created, despite, you know, outside of something like this, that running around trying to validate all of these perspectives, like the realization that, oh my god, I've never lived for me, in the sense of not not wondering what someone else is going to think, or their own, like that assumption, assuming that someone else is having that perception of you, the one that you're thinking about uniquely, entirely, and like the only one seeing that perspective from your perspective and from that sense of journey. And so if you are like holding things back, holding yourself back, not sharing things or expressing things, or not, or acting selfishly, it's like the thoughts that spin through are going to be about you, you know? If that's what you're doing, those thoughts are going to be there. And so it's like the thoughts are informed by your actions too. And they tend to be, and sure, it's like I'm, you know, thoughts about yourself can spin through as you do things, as you jump in to new stuff, but it's like it's very much your own sort of thing. But if you are acting that way, it's like those thoughts are going to be, and you can spin through all these things like, okay, for me to maintain control, I must also know that I'm something. And then things do feel like they mean something about you. But if you're not trying to stay so much in control, that fear of expression isn't there so much. It isn't something to be maintained. It's like your mind almost opens up. But that's the trade, I guess, is you don't get it to mean something about you. It's not you overcoming this or sharing this or expressing this or, you know, having this insight. It's like it's just there. You know, it's just what's there, and it doesn't have anything to do with me whatsoever. It's just what's being expressed, because being expressed verbally, being expressed physically, being expressed emotionally, like it's all the same sort of thing. And I don't know if I ever realized how much we can limit our own mind by trying to stay in control, by thinking that we have a sense of control, because that control stems from thinking about stuff, thinking about yourself and how much that, like, that sense of being in control comes from thinking. Because if you're not, there's not that sense of control, but there isn't the concern about it so much because you're not thinking so much anyway. And that's where it feels like the concern would come from. And like your experience in the immediacy, your experience right now is a lot lighter because you're not thinking about yourself and you're not weighed down by trying to maintain something.
It's tricky, isn't it? And it's just because you spend your life thinking you're in control, and then you start to recognize it. And so, you go, okay, I need to get out of that. I need to let go of this illusion that I'm in control. And so I'm going to change my life so I can do that. Not recognizing that you're still attempting to have control. Now, this is just an attempt to get away from control through control. And it's because it's still about you. Now it's about you letting go of control rather than you wanting to be in control. But it's still about some fictional you, which is in itself a sense of control. And so this is why I say it can be tricky, because you can't think your way there. You can't think your way out of that sense of control. You actually have to just shoot from the hip. You actually just have to be you. You actually just have to speak, choose, act, pick a direction, whatever it is, just do it. You're already you. You're already you. That's the point. You can't think your way to being you. You can't. It doesn't matter if it's good intention. Oh, no, I'm going to let go of all this. That's going to get me closer to being myself. You just made a path to something you could do right now. And it's just letting go of the thought about yourself, but then it's maintaining it, right? Like that's the point. This is why it's a practice. This is why you can't beat yourself up. Because let's just say that you're in the middle of all your shit. Like you're 16 years old, you're defining yourself left, right, and center. You're going for control. You know what you're going to do with your future. You're going to do all that, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Amidst all of that, you have a moment where you just let all that go and you're like, holy fuck, I don't actually know what the hell I want to do with my life. And so you go screaming back to the story. But that moment is the same moment that we're having all the time. It's the same moment we've been having ever since. That moment of just, oh fuck, here I am in a room. That's what we're cultivating, is that sense of that moment. It has nothing to do with getting anywhere. The mind can't get there. It can't think its way there. It can feel real good about how good it is at trying to get there, but it can't. It can't ever actually get there. You have to let go. And that's all it is. And there's no you to let go. That's what you're letting go of. That's what you're letting go of. And that's it. It's the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing, unless you want it to be heavy. And why do you want it to be heavy? Well, maybe you're not done processing shit yet. Why are you rushing it? Instead of trying to get to a place where you're always in that deep sense of the moment, cultivate the moments you have now. But that means if you want to cultivate those moments, you have to let go of the trajectory. You have to say, fuck it, I'm doing the best I can. And that's when you actually have more of those moments and more of those opportunities to cultivate that fucking sensitivity in that place. Isn't it funny? We get in our own way. We get in our own way trying to get to where we've always been.
Oh my god. And like because it's this like, and I'm not like trying to pass off any fucking like responsibility, but like it's addictive to think that you're in control, like to think that you can think your way there, and like there's got to be something. There's got to be something that leads to something, like something that does it, as opposed to just like maybe I don't know, like for everything. And like there's an informative nature to things, the flow, whatnot. But it makes a lot more sense when it's not like I'm gonna do this to do this. I'm gonna do this to do that. Like I'm gonna, the other day or a couple months ago, like I went to the comedy club and like did a little stand up bit. And it was almost like it was very much just like this is something that Andrew isn't good at. And Andrew needs to overcome this and do this thing to like get better at this. Cause like you can do that too. You could do that and make it about you and become like, put a lot of practice into it or something, or with public speaking. It's like do a lot of it. Like if I wanted to maintain control, it's like get into it and do it. And it's not to say that that isn't something for me that like I want to get into more, because it's like, yeah, I'm afraid of that, you know, being out and open and expressing just whatever's there. But it's also coming from that sense of needing to stay in control, needing to be in control, not being willing to just express or share, like in the moment with speaking. And so there's different ways that I feel like people can hold on to senses of control, things, habitual things to look to even. And when I was, cultivating that sense of self, sense of me, whatever, when I was younger, like I left a Catholic school and went to another school that was less Catholic, still technically Catholic, but basically public school. And the story I would always tell myself was I should be saying something when I was quiet, like, that I say, but that's just a sort of filler word I use, but people may resonate. Who knows?
And I do know.
Yeah. And so that's all I would ever hear in my head was like, I should be saying something, I should be expressing. And it became like a sort of a sense of need. Like I need to be sharing or expressing instead of, and that then is what filled, like, if I share something, then people like me, or if I don't share, if I keep it in, then I can maintain that sense of control. And again, it's like a younger, you're cultivating that sense of control. Like how well can you maintain control? Like how well can you hold on to something, to some perception, to some right way, to some path, to some journey, to something that means something about you. Like this is the right journey to be on, the right path to be on, the right thing to do, the right thing to say. Like when none of that's there, when you spin through all of those things, go through all of that stuff, like eventually you can be left with, oh, maybe it's not about me. Maybe there isn't something that I have to hold on to. Maybe I can just continue to live my life and see where it goes. And like you were talking about the other day with the, feeling like you're in a cave and seeing certain things, and then seeing that, oh, there are things when you are in spots where you don't feel like you need to be doing something specific, that you see things have a sense of making sense. And so, yeah, there's lots of things that we can do to try and stay in control. And like fears that come up, that it's like, oh, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? Like, yeah, that happens. Cool. If you say that, cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Or if you don't say anything, cool. It's the story. We've always just reacted to the story, right? Not knowing what was going to happen regardless. Maybe being quiet wasn't noticed by anyone. maybe what you were doing wasn't actually noted to any large degree by anyone, but except for you, right? Because you were watching the story, reacting to the story. I was doing the same thing. And that's admittedly where most of my dumbass decisions came from, was reacting to the stories in my head, so far removed from reality that I was like fucking hundreds of stories in with overlapping stories. And that's kind of the point, is to recognize that and then go, right. But if I go, shit, I need to dig out of all of that because that is why I'm fucking up my life. That's a story. That's a story. And that's what I mean, is that you can have the recognition of something and not make it about your story. It can just be what it is. You can just be what you are. And you can have recognitions and you can have thoughts that you don't necessarily have to worry about because you're not your story, which means that they're just informative rather than being threatening or rather than promising you more value. They're just informative. So you just keep moving. And that's all life has to be. But isn't it interesting that in our culture, in our society, the way that human beings have evolved to where they are right now, we grow up and we are one of the few mammals that's born useless. Like, we don't have the ability to walk, and we've discussed why. Because humans, as they started using their brain more and the brain started to grow, it started using more of the body's energy, which caused the human body to shrink over time as we evolved into Homo sapien, which meant that the human birthing process was diminished by the smaller body. And so human beings were born before they're supposed to be born, which is why they're not able to walk for a long time. So we're born useless, and we're born into a society that's almost entirely obsessed with concepts, right? How they think about themselves, how they think about each other, how they think about the world, how they identify with their community, with their religion, with their country, with their neighborhood, with how they dress, with how much money they make, all that stuff. And we're, again, useless. We can't walk, we can't feed ourselves, we don't know how to survive, and the world we live in is a concrete jungle, making it impossible to know how to survive without understanding how to adapt to the thinking that's going on around us. And so we start to learn the national anthem. We start to learn our ABCs. We learn our name, right? We learn our last name. We learn our address. We learn our religion, right? We learn all of this stuff. And that is how we learn to adapt to the people who will bring us food, who will bring us companionship, who will make us feel connected and safe to the best of our ability. And this is the world that we grow up in. No wonder we're so absorbed in our stories. The whole world is built on them. So to judge ourselves for going through it and then coming to a point where we're like, hold up, it seems like there's something underlying the very nature of everything I'm experiencing that doesn't seem quite right. Like, there's something that I can feel is off in everything I do, which is what contributes to my misery. But I can't see it. And you realize it's the you that you're thinking about. That's a hell of an insight. It's a hell of a leap. It really is, to come to the point where you question the very thing that up until that moment you thought was reality. Because we learned it so very early. It really was a part of our reality. We had to adapt to thinking to survive.
And it can real quickly turn into this sense of, well, I've recognized that I'm not this thing, which then means something about me. And it's like, like anything, it's like, no, not that either. Because it's like, oh, it must mean this. It must mean that. Like, everything must mean something. Even that can turn into, well, that means something about me, like deriving value from something instead of it just being like, there's some information, noted, chips are going to keep falling as they are and falling as they may. It's not this like, got to do something about it, got to get it across to someone else, got to tell someone else because I got a moment of, relaxation, moment of peace, maybe lasted a bit. And then as soon as it turns into something about you, there comes the thinking, how do I express it? How do I say it in the best way? How do I share it in the best way? Trying to, and gotten to points where I've wanted to figure out, like I figure out how to say this, how to say the concepts so well instead of taking it in and just being it, instead of just expressing it. Like, no, there must be some way to get this across. For who and why? And why do you want to get it across to someone else? Because it's become something that you're no longer experiencing. Because as soon as it means something about you, you're not experiencing it. You can't have both. It can't mean something about you and it be experienced, because that not meaning something about you is the experience. Like, that's where the lightness comes from. But if everything that you've been taught was to circle around, well, this means so, like, because it can become everything that happens then means something about me. And you walk around on eggshells, worried you get a look from someone. You don't know what the fuck they're thinking, but you can immediately assume that it means something because it's being taught that, like, you are what you're thinking about. And so therefore, if you are what you're thinking about, then you're like, oh, but what about this? What about that? This person, they might be thinking this, having no idea whatsoever, and continuing. And then it can become like creating your own hell, assuming that a bunch of stuff, and then everything you hear, you assume means something about you instead of just being there, not trying to convince someone, not trying to tell someone, not trying to build yourself up through convincing someone, thinking that means something. And if you're already have gotten used to sharing things and expressing things, then as soon as, you get a moment where it's like a sense of relaxation, like, you're going to want to share and express that to, like, add more to that sense of me, of it meaning something about me instead of it not. And it's like, that's that's it. It's like the it's because it's not even, I was gonna say the bitch is that it doesn't mean anything about you. It's like, that's it is, but it's not. It's like, it feels like it is if you're thinking about yourself. And if not, then it's like, what is that? Like, there isn't.
Funny.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Absurd. But
That's the flip side to it being a bitch, is that it's hilarious. And that's really it. This is why, again, I choose to laugh. I like to keep it light, because that's just it. But that said, I wanted to mention that I just lived a full example of what we're talking about in the last span of, I think, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. All of a sudden, I had a memory of a podcast episode that we recorded live. And at the end of that episode, we kind of signed off, but we're like, hold up, we'll address the comments and I'll clip it out later. And I don't think I did. I think I actually just put it out there just like that with all of the additional stuff at the end. And then I went through this whole thing like, oh my God. And like it was this huge deal for us to like leave that in there. And like I had somehow failed us by not editing that out. And I had this whole emotional thing that had just happened. My body went like flushed for a moment of like, fuck. And then it dawned on me. I'm like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly it. Like, all of a sudden, that was all just assumption. Why? Because it meant something about me. Why? Because I made a mistake. Why? Because then somebody's going to disagree with it or dislike it or possibly, go, this wasn't well edited. Like, there are so many things that just go with this diminished sense of me. The idea, according to something that I'm assuming I have done incorrectly. instead of something I've just done. And then, boom, what's the lesson there? Pay more attention? Or don't give a fuck? Or both? Right? Because that's the thing. Like, it's this huge deal. Why? It's something I said online, live. Like, obviously, I could live with it. That's why I said it. And I know that because I say what I mean, which is another part of the whole thing, isn't it? But nonetheless, all that true, my brain's like, here's a story, and I fucking went for it. Wrote it out in a couple minutes, happy to say, learned the lesson, realized that I was just giving myself a little bit more ability to empathize with my own fucking point, that the story is in fact not reality, but it can feel real as soon as you want to think it is.
And that sense that you were describing hit me. It's like, wait a second, what is, where is that? What is that? And it's the same sort of thing. Like, but and for things like that, the reason typically that things like that do play out, or for example, I had a episode that I posted not too long ago that the audio cut, and I got a text from a friend that was like, "Hey, heads up." And that came from initially not paying attention because thought about me. And then, like, in that, I could judge myself, and then miss something else, and then miss something else, and then miss something else. And rather than just paying attention, you can keep thinking about yourself and assuming that there's something that you're going to get to, some point where it's like, well, this is it. This must be the thing. This is going to be the thing that, frees me, lets me go, blah, 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 blah. Doing this thing is going to do whatever. And like, it leads to builds of things that you like. It feels like a build instead of just living your life and things not meaning so much about you as you go. Because then there's builds and swells, there's things you deal with and go through, but it doesn't necessarily mean something about you until you start thinking that it does.
Isn't that funny? That's really all it is. It's like you can have 1,000 thoughts a day. Like you do. You have more than 1,000 thoughts a day. You have hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of thoughts in a day, easily. And what's funny is that a good portion of them you just disregard. You know what I mean? Like, or it's all of a sudden you become acutely aware of one, and because you're afraid of it, it becomes your whole world. Like all of a sudden you're walking, you're like, oh, seagull, seagull, is it gonna poop on me? And you're actually thinking like the seagull's aiming for me. And you go through this whole thing. None of it's real. It was just your brain trying to make sense out of what the fuck is happening. Right. And if you're in danger. And so it takes it personally, because if it wasn't personal, what's the odds that you do something about it? And that's the point, right? Is that at one point we didn't realize all this. We couldn't realize all this. We were too busy trying to grow up with a brain that creates concepts. And I want to mention this. It's really important to recognize that I went through that whole thing where I'm like, we grew up in this world of concepts and everybody's involved with their concepts. They grew up in it too. And the people before them, and the people before them, and the people before them. Keep going. This isn't something that's been done to you. This is something we're going through together. In various different ways. That's kind of the thing we were talking about earlier about that whole, hard times make hard men fucking, I don't know. The point being, do you want to say it? Because that's probably going to make it sound a lot better.
Hard times create hard men, hard men create soft times create soft men create hard times.
So it really helps to recognize that all of that's happening at the same time. right? Like there are people who are making, soft children, and there are people who are making harder children, and that's the thing. And then those children are meeting each other somewhere in the middle. And there's a lot of stuff happening, but it's that whole thing we have control again. Right? And what does it mean to be a hard man? What does it mean to be a hard man other than somebody who's just dealing with reality as it comes? That has nothing to do with being a hard man. That has everything to do with just being responsible. Right? And what's a soft person other than somebody who's trying to avoid responsibility? Who's like, don't do that. Change the environment for me. I'm not comfortable. That kind of thing. Right? So, I mean, that's the point, is that it's not that one creates the other, but if you're not careful, like it's not something you can teach. And I think that that's something that we've made the mistake of thinking historically, that if I, as a business person, excel in my life and I make, a living where I can feed my family and I can do all of that, that's what I'm going to teach my kid to do. Not recognizing that it was actually the willingness to continue on every time that I was faced with my own doubt, faced with my own inner story, that I couldn't do those things, that I wouldn't be a good father, that I wouldn't be a good fucking businessman, that I wouldn't be a good husband, that I wouldn't be all that. And you kept going. And yet we don't think that was the strength, right? We think, no, it was the business and the money and the house and all of that. It's like, no, it was the mentality that you used to get there. Right? This is kind of what my point was with the whole Jesus thing the other day, right? Like we look at the passion of Jesus as the way he was willing to die for what he believed. Okay. And that's the typical Christian narrative about it. I see a person who grew up ingrained in his local religion, learned it so very well that he could teach and actually like argue with rabbis in the temple by the age of like 10. He knew all the scriptures by heart, and then leaves for whatever reason, travels, lives a life of 18 years. Who knows what he was doing, and comes back knowing that he is going to question and anger the local religion, just because what he's saying, while it does line up with the religion, with the scriptures, does not line up with the common interpretation of them. He knows he's not going to be welcome in a lot of places. He says it. Right? See, to me, that's the story. That's the story. Had nothing to do with anything other than that. Like, cool stuff about us being one. Yep, sure, cool. Holy fuck. Like most of us are afraid to tell our families we smoke weed. You imagine this guy's like, yeah, cool, scripture. I remember the whole religion thing. That whole thing ends with me. They're like, excuse me? They're like, yeah. And he's like, yep, you're all talking about, the Messiah, the person who recognizes, the person who is God and all that. It's me. Let's just call this a fucking day and move on with actually being there for each other. It was that. And that's inspiring. Stupid, but inspiring. You might as well put a big target on you. Like that's the thing. It would be like if I was to go, yeah, because I'm Jesus. No, like that's the worst thing to say. And it's because of the same reason that Jesus got fucked. He's like, yeah, I'm God. We're all God. If I was like, yeah, I'm Jesus. We're all Jesus. People are going to look at their idea of Jesus. They're not looking at God or Jesus when we're saying those things. They're looking at what they hold on to as an idea of themselves, their story. And regardless of how much you might be being driven by empathy, intuition, connection, a willingness to be vulnerable and honest, they'll still see you as the devil because you're contradicting the story. Nobody's actually thinking about God or Jesus or each other. We're all thinking. And so we're not being informed by the thoughts. We're all taking it personally because we're trying to get somewhere. We're going, no, I'm thinking, I'm problem solving, I'm working all of this out, instead of it's just unfolding and I'm being informed by it unfolding. There's an element of possession, of ownership, of control. And it's what blinds us to the fact that we're just projecting what we need and fear and desire.
Yeah, like that sense of getting something somewhere, getting yourself somewhere to this point that doesn't exist, like this point, getting to this spot that doesn't exist. And so, yeah, Jesus leaving and coming back and being being willing to know that, yeah, this is gonna make some people angry. This is gonna piss some people off. But I know what it's like to be in those spots. I know what it's like to be spinning through, trying to solve everything, think your way through everything, spiraling around, pacing around like you feel like a fucking maniac, trying to maintain a sense of control. You feel like you're losing your goddamn mind because it's that sense of control that's being lost that you never actually had. It's the feeling like you're in control. That seems, because that's seemed honestly petrifying at times when someone would say, you're not in control. It's like, then anything could be on the table, because there is an element of acceptance of whatever's there, and you can start to see where your own stuff is. It's only your own, because any sense of trying to stay in control is coming from your own sense of, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, the right thing to be, the wrong thing to be. And as you start to lose that sense of control, or feeling that you could be in it, those things start to surface. All of those fears that don't actually mean anything about you, don't necessarily have to do with you, but is just a component of being a human. Like, those start to arise. You start to see different things that are only your own judgments, concerns, worries, fears, because there's no guarantee outside of any of the stuff that comes up for you. If you were to say, okay, what if I didn't have control of what's being expressed, what's being shared? If you're thinking about yourself, it seems scary, trying to maintain some perception. And that desire, even the desire to be liked, it's like, well, I got to control this response, thinking that you can say something to be nice instead of just acting accordingly. Because then it's not nearly as frightening if it's all on the table and you're just being informed by what's going on. But it's not, you can't be selfish. Like, you can't think about yourself. You can't have both. You can't maintain both. But what you do get in return is your experience, like your actual experience, instead of just spending your life trying to maintain a perception, a degree of control. Like, well, no, I'm gonna control how this thing is seen or looked at. I'm gonna control how it's. So I'm gonna do all these things to look a certain way, or be a certain way, or act a certain way. The right way to be, the right thing to do, the right way to act. That's all via thought. It's all trying to be in control. I can control my way towards doing that, and doesn't require any sense of attention being paid. It's just within yourself. And then as that's looked at, it's like, oh, there's something there. There's something in my head. There's some sense of control. There's something I could thinking your way out of thoughts. Like, there's something to thinking about, and instead of just dropping the whole thing and just like seeing what's there. It's like, what's there if there weren't, as those things pop up, come up. It's like, what if there wasn't a concern so much in response to those things, then you're a little more open. And so, some of this maybe starts with openness, vulnerability, but then it's just, eventually that gets to a point where it's like still kind of making it about you. And then when it's not so much, then you shift. And then it's just like one way or the other, open, vulnerable. Yeah, sure. It has its time and place depending on the situation, but it's not like, oh, I gotta force this, gotta get this out there because I'm a open and vulnerable person. It's like, nah, not that either, because that then informs a bunch of other stuff that you do. It's not about it meaning something about you. Oh, I feel good about myself because I'm open. I'm expressing myself. It's like you're always expressing yourself, and like doing it in a right way is just another sense of control, and it can become that, like, openness too.
Absolutely. Because again, it's very easy to fall into. It's very easy to think there is some perfect way to wrap things up. And there isn't. And on that note, I vote that we end this here because there really is nothing more to say. Stop listening. Go live your life. We'll see you for the next episode.
Bye, everyone.